Welcome back, everybody. Well, this week's episode is all about the rear diff, my 64 Chrysler. Well, welcome back, everybody. So yeah, we're diving right in here. Got a few things we got to figure out today. I got to figure out, number one, my wheel bearing and seal out here. It's not leaking on the backside. I'm only going to replace it just because it's been sitting for 40 years and it's probably dry. But I do need to know if these are the original Chrysler bearing and seals, which is an outer bearing and a seal behind the backer. And then it has an inner seal that actually seals the oil from coming through. And the bearing is actually packed with grease. Or if somebody was in here after the fact, then the outside will be what's called a green bearing, which is actually more of a company name than a style. But they are the ones that invented it. But there'd be a green bearing, which doesn't have the inner seal, which is going to require a lot more work because if I can't save the bearing, then I got to pull it all apart. Now, the oil in the rear end, the gear fluid, it's dark, but it's clean. It's fairly dark, but it is clean. And the bearing out on the outside here, it is smooth as butter. There's never been an issue. When you spin a tire and let it roll, there's not even a sound that comes out of it. So I'm really hoping that it's an original style cup and cone bearing, like a Timken bearing on the outside here. And it's in good shape, no pitting, no rust, no nothing. And the inside will be an inner seal. And that's all I have to replace is to pop out that inner seal. It's just like a regular lip seal that'll go in there. Super cheap, super easy. If the bearing is damaged or there's pitting or it doesn't look like it's going to be any good, then it's a bit of work. I don't have a press big enough to get in there to properly press the shaft of that bearing. So I'll end up heating them and hitting them with some large hammers till the race cracks because it is a hardened steel. Or I might have to cut through it a little bit with a grinder to get that bearing to split so I can get it off. But doing that, I risk damaging my shaft, and I really don't want to do that. I really don't want to mess that up. All right, so right in there are the bolts I got to get. There's two on each side and one on the bottom. It's kind of an oblong shape in there. It's like a circle with the edge cut off it. But getting this apart, like when I had it apart before, the backing plates are thick. There's nothing wrong with them at all. They're not like those little tin ones that are on the cars from the 80s and the 90s. So I'll end up throwing that backing plate in the blaster. I'll clean it up. I'll be taking and replacing the cylinders, the brake cylinders. The backs are definitely getting the drums again. I don't know if it's worthwhile saving the drums and getting them turned. I'll check out the price on new ones. But yeah, I'll be redoing the backs as drums. The fronts, I don't know. I would love to put a front disc kit on there, but it's pricey. It's pricey for me anyway. So we'll pull out those 5 bolts, see if we can slip that axle out and see what kind of seal we got in there. Well, things are escalating quickly here. Between hammers, heat, pullers, just beaten. I cannot get this axle to come loose from the hub, or I don't know, the axle bearing loose from the axle tube. It's seized in there. Now, I did go in and I took all the bolts or all the nuts off the differential just to crack that loose so I can, it moves around easily. And I think the axle is moving easy inside the differential, so I don't think the issue's there. Now these axles have to come out in order to remove the differential. The ring gear is part of the front assembly, so the axle is actually like right through the center of the ring gear. This is the only way for it to come off. This axle has to come out first. But that's one light here. If you get down behind here, see right there behind the brake line where it bumps up? That's where the bearing sits. That's where it's pressed in there. And man, for the life of me, I cannot get it out. Got the heat going on this thing. Got the hammer going on it. I've resorted to trying to remove the flange hub from the axle. These are a 2-piece. But it's held in by a keyway, which I cannot get out. And I tried to pull it past the key. It won't budge at all. If I can get this off, there's a tool that you can make. It looks fairly easy to help pull that axle out. But until I can get that off, there's nothing else I can do here except for onto the hammer and try to get that to break free. Now, I was hoping to save the bearing inside, but the more I beat on this, the harder it is on that tapered bearing. That race is smacking the edges of those bearings, and I'm sure it's causing dimples. It's not that expensive to replace them, but that might be where I have to go. The other thing is, I think I'm going to have to take the torch. I don't know how much heat I can put to the axle tube, but I might have to try and start heating that axle tube on the inside to see if I can expand it enough and break it free to pull that axle out. Well, with a big boom and not recording, I got that axle out of there. It was just more heat. Like I said, I just put heat all around that outside, worked out with the hammer. It's a ton of, sorry. It's a ton of grease in there. She's not seized. It's just that tight inside there, and what a bugger of a time. But good thing is, I got shims. It's shimmed from the outside. The bad part means that it's the bearing that has to come off that way, which means I have to try to get this hub off, which I haven't been able to move. There is a keyway in here, and there's no grease and nothing on there. So she's been in there a long time. So everything looks good in the shaft. There's orange paint here, whatever that is. There's some numbers, handwritten numbers still on it. The shaft splines are perfectly straight. You can see where they were sitting into the drive, but there is no wear on them. They're not twisted or anything. That's good. Everything looks good. The race where the seal runs. See the dark spot? That's actually like a mirror. It's perfectly reflective there. So everything's good there, but I gotta get this hub off somehow. I think I'm gonna let her sit overnight here, get her up in the vise, fill the end of that cup with some good penetrating oil, let that sit overnight, and hopefully it'll work its way through. And just like that, big explosion, and she's off. So I let this sit overnight. I actually filled the cup up with my penetrating oil. I come back out today and it was gone. And I got a couple little drips down in the bottom, so it worked its way all the way through. So I put my puller on, hit it with the impact, and ugga-dugga on that until the socket stopped moving. It was not going anywhere. She looks rough, but it's still good. I can still get my nut on and off, which is all that matters. So I had it under tension, put the heat to her, just heat it and keep going. And I started to hear like little ticking sounds, like that little cracking sound. So I stopped the heat, put the impact back on it, hammered on it for another minute and a half, and just boom, it just come loose. So with that tapered key, yeah, it's a tapered shaft as well. And what a thing to try to get off. So everything is apart and cleaned up now. I just ran the backing plate through the blaster just to get that scale off. Turned out really good. The bearing, man, this thing's mint. There's not a mark on that at all. That is so smooth. And you know what's kind of cool too? Made in Canada. That's probably why it's so awesome. It's made in Canada. And then, of course, keyway, clean that up. Nut is still good. Still goes on the shaft fine. Hub, good shape. No problems there. Got it just a quick little blast to clean it up. And then, of course, my shaft, which everything went well is on that too. Where the seal goes, it's nice and smooth. There's no edge or anything to catch. And, of course, where the bearing sets, there's not even any pitting under there. And it literally just popped off. It was awesome. I was ready for a fight, but it come off good. The only thing there's a little bit of pitting is the taper where the hub went on, and that's to be expected. It was dry as a bone. The only spots that were wet is I had like little lines and spots where my penetrating oil made it all the way through. But other than that, the couple little pits, not a big deal. When this goes back together, I'll end up using a little bit of Never Seize on there just in case I ever have to get it off again, or it's not me. Some guy in the future will love me for it and sing me praises. So, got my tools all cleaned up and dirt cleaned up on this side. Time to jump on the other side. Now that I got a plan of how I got this one apart, I'm hoping the other side comes apart a lot easier. Just kind of refined and tweaked my my skills. So let's go yank that other side out. Alrighty. Now, I have no idea how much this thing weighs. Yeah, she is ready to fall out rather than that one nut. I think all the fluid's done pouring. Take that one last nut out. And see what happens here. According to the drawings that I see, there's absolutely nothing else going on in here. It'll just come out all in one piece. Oh. Can't reach my camera. I might have to cut this for a moment. It's taking a little longer than I thought. I don't want to chew up too much time. Oh, here we go. All right. Come on. Oh. She got some weight to her. Holy crap. Oh my goodness. I was thinking it was going to be heavy, but she's way heavier than I thought it was going to be. I got a little dirt. A little dirt on the side of the pinion. Not too bad. Let's drag her out and see what we got. All right, got that diff dropped out of the way. Yeah, I put it up on its edge there just so I could do a TikTok as well. I don't kind of favor back and forth. But looking inside here, not too bad. There's a little bit of sludge at the bottom of the diff there. Not much at all, but no rust or corrosion or anything inside here. But one thing I got a kick out of is look at the welds from factory up in there. Just garbage. That's unreal. And underneath as well too. Brutal. Looks like bubble gum. So what that is there's 3 parts to this diff. Let me get back here a second. Oh, sorry. So you got the round dented out piece of the back. You can see the lip here where it's welded in. Then you have the left and right tubes, and they're separated. That's where they welded in the middle. And then there's a stiffener ring all around the outside here that's welded. If you take a look, you can see the 2 layers there. So there's 4 pieces making up this rear diff, and with those welds, I'm surprised it held, but obviously it worked because it's 60 years later, and she wasn't dripping out the diff welds anyway. But let's go over and check out that differential while we're at it. And here we are in all its glory. And that's exactly how it comes out. The entire piece is one assembly. Now, there were people mentioning about C-clips on the inside, just like Chevys and some of the newer trucks have. You got to take the rear cover off, pull out the pin, push the axle in, take out a C-clip. It's only those 5 bolts on the outside of that hub that you saw there come off quickly that hold those axles in, and they just go through the whole tube and they drop into each side. Down inside there's a pin which gives it the correct space so they don't they go in too far. But it doesn't matter because the way the axles are set up with the bearing, the flange, the collar, and then the plate coming into it, they can only go in so far. It's a little different than a lot of the other 300s and Newports and Windsors that are out there. Canadian, that's the only thing I could say. It's a Canadian axle. Sorry, or Canadian build. All the seals, the bearings, even the hubs say made in Canada. But yeah, so it's a 10-bolt, 8 3/4 diff. And she is mint. There is not a wear mark on a tooth anywhere. Got perfect pattern on each side. And then going down in there on the pinion, same thing. There is no heavy wear on one side or the other. Looks good. Now, this is what they call the Sure Grip. It is a limited slip, but acts as a posi. There's a set of clutches in here, but they don't. You don't get a one-wheel peel when it's a limited slip that runs like a posi. It's when you dump the beans to her, when you feed her the onions, both tires get equal power as you take off. If you're in a really tight turn, like in a parking lot or something, that's where it comes in like a limited slip where one wheel will break free, make it easier on the diff to make that turn, easier on your tires too. But when you're in a straight line and you punch it, nothing is letting loose in this diff and both wheels are giving you the go. Now with this rear diff, I am not getting into this. There's no metallic pieces in it. There's no wear signs anywhere. When it was in the car and I turned that wheel, it was smooth as butter. So I think I'm going to leave it for the most part. But you can tell this pinion seal was leaking. Now I'm going to try to get in there and get that out. I removed the bump stop. That's right on the top of it here. This stops the transmission from tipping up too much when you're torquing on her, putting beans to her. There's a bump and there's a big lug underneath the car that stops that. Remove that, and then I've also removed the saddle clamps that hold the rear cross in. And these are something that are definitely going to get upgraded. These are just like stamped pieces of tin, a little thicker than tin, but you know what I mean. There's not much to them at all, and it'd be really nice they don't let go. Not a lot of more. There's more horsepower than a factory going into this thing. Not that much more though, but it'd be really nice if I laid into her and I didn't twist those off. No effort at all, which is good because all I have is a standard socket. I don't have an impact socket that big, but should come off no issue. Of course, the yoke, it just slid right off, and this is the only reason I'm in here, is right there. Replace that pinion seal where it rides on there. Nice silver spot. It looks really good. Was gonna clean that up. Shield is good as well too. Call that a win. Well, we kind of jumped ahead here. You can see there's a lot of something missing down here, and what happened is I ran into a problem with the U-bolts holding the axles to the leaf springs. Gonna give you a show on that. One of these leaf springs are already completely done. The axle has been painted, and I still got to get the other one off, and that's what we're going to work on right now. But let me give you a show what I found. So here's one of the U-bolts that was on the car here, and they look okay. They present okay, except if I run this in right to there where the clean threads stop. We're like halfway in the nut. That's the way all 4 U-bolts were. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I should say 3.5 U-bolts, because one was gone. One was sheared right off. Then was it was gone, no nut, and it was broken off below the mount plate. But yes, this is my issue. Looking at this, actually here, let's get over to the other side. It's a little dark over here, but this car has a trailer hitch on it. And this is kind of in my mind what I think has happened. I think they added a helper spring to the bottom of this one just to lift the car up a little more. I think that's what they did. This is the only thing that makes sense. They added this extra spring in here, and instead of getting longer U-bolts, they just used the same ones. Well, you just added over 1/4 inch of thickness here. And what happened is these are pinched nuts. You see there's little dimples in them? That's right there. That's where the lock is. They got to get into that before it starts locking. And then also, you should have at least 2 or 3 threads sticking at the bottom to make this safe. But you can see right there where the clean metal is. If I turn that down to it, there's only half the nut is being used. And it's stretched it right out. So if I turn this out a little bit, look at that. Can you hear it? See how loose there? It has completely stretched the end of those threads off. I'm surprised it's still on there. This one here, she gone. She broken right off. See the threads? You can see how much thread's on there. Only half that nut's worth. And this one just snapped right off. No bueno, no good. Here's the other side as well too. You can see right there is where it started on the nut. Same as that side. Only half that nut being used. That is so dangerous. I can't believe they stayed in there for any amount of time. Can't believe they didn't just pop off when they first torqued that down. So finding the leaf springs like that meant I got to pull the U-bolts to fix those up, get new ones. Then if I pulled the U-bolts, I thought, well, you know what? Their rear axle is just floating there. I might as well pull it out to clean it up and paint it. So I did that. Then that turned into the brake drums getting done. And then, of course, I broke down the leaf pack and cleaned all the crap out between that. Got them cleaned up. Got some good hard polymer paint on there. That's my rust paint that I always like using. So now I'm into that. Now, because I'm doing that, now I'm going to do the sliders. And it just kind of keep going on and on and on and on. These are wet. I just painted them. But I got them turned. That's the biggest thing with those. Sent them off to the shop in town. They checked them for flatness this way. Everything is good. They're still round, even after me pulling on them. And they turned them down, and they only took off like maybe 30 thou. And they look like new inside, which is awesome. So I'm going to try to save them. If they wobble, well, we'll end up getting new ones down the road. But for $31 for him to press those to make sure they're flat, and then also to turn them, better than paying the $179 is what the cheapest I could find them for this car. So unfortunately, with these leaf springs, there's a lot of wrench turning. There's only one bolt that I can get off with an impact, and that's the lower one. The other one is way up top on the shackle. So I got to get that out, and there's no bolts on this side. This is a shackle hanger. You'll see that when I pull it apart. And of course, the same with the front side. You can't get in there as well either. It's bolt, the nut is almost the thickness of the space between the spring hanger and the side of the frame. It's just enough to get a wrench in there to take it out. So I'm gonna pull these two bolts off here, yank that front one out, got my jack under the spring, take some of the weight, and we'll just lower that down. There we go. The left-hand spring is out. Now, everything on the left-hand side of this car has been giving me grief. So, when I took these original spring plates off for the shock mounts, that one broke as well too. All four of them I soaked down overnight. Actually, I soaked all these bolts overnight. Soaked them all overnight. First three come off. Of course, the last one breaks on the left-hand side. For the leaf springs, the shackle and the bolt down here, soaked them down, of course, all night. There we go. First one come off. The second one, it was moving. Then it started getting stiff, so I backed it up a little bit, and then I got less distance forward. So I got up on there with my little wire brush, just these little ones that I scrub parts with. Cleaned up as best I can, put a little more juice on there, a little lubricant. It started to feel like it was coming off, and then it got tight, and then I started going backwards, and then all of a sudden I can't move anymore, and I got to the point where she was just locked solid. So I just, whatever, put the wrench on it, snapped it off. Unfortunately, I got to buy a new one. They're 45 bucks. Lots of them online, easy to get. I saw those when I was looking for bushings because I thought that's all I would need. But now I'm going to get another hanger. Like, I couldn't soak them anymore. Like, the penetrant is like running down the leaf springs. And so I did what I could, but unfortunately that's just part of the deal. So now, just like the other ones, we're gonna break this baby down. We're gonna chip all the hard scale off it, then get it outside, put the wire wheel to it, and the cut brush, we're gonna clean it down and get it so it's just all the loose stuff is off. So I can put my rust stop in there, or rust check, and get that to start binding to the iron oxides left behind. We'll put a coat of primer on it, throw the black paint, and it should be done. And together. So, first things first, got this stud in the middle. Not even gonna try, just like the last one, I'm not even gonna try to loosen that up. Just like, I don't know if you can look at the shape of that thing. It's all bent and twisted. And that's not for me. So we're just gonna throw a 1/2 inch ratchet on it, pop it right off. And then we're gonna use the pipe wrench over there. We gotta bend back these two large clamps that allow us to pull the leaf springs out of here. This clamp is riveted to the bottom leaf there. And these, when they get put back on, they just get heated up cherry red and they get beat down with a hammer. We got a small clamp over here, and we'll slowly just start popping this thing apart. All right, so this is what it looks like when they're all ground down. Now, I've only run a wire wheel. I do not want to go to bare steel. I absolutely do not want that. I want to make sure that I have this kind of brownish, rusty surface on it. Just no flakes. No flakes at all. And the reason why I want that surface is, like I've done with the rest of the car, all my rust paints and primers, they are made and designed to go onto rust on the direct steel, and it causes that reaction to turn that iron oxide into a hard product. I don't know what you'd call it, but it's like plastic. It's really hard. Just like the other springs, they're gone solid now. They've been drying for a couple of days now. So this is what it looks like. They're dimply, of course. You know, they've been stacked together literally for 60 years. Almost 60 years. 59 years and about 363 days right now. By the time this video is, it's going to be the new year. But why I'm doing that, that's about how old this sucker is. So now that it's down, we're just going to rip some primer, rip a light coat of primer, just to, you know, get that surface going. Give that a bit to dry. Then I'm going to hit it with my top coat, which is the same products, still a rust stop. And that'll just help get right in there, bite in, bind to that, and she'll be rock solid by tomorrow. All right, now that everything is painted, you can see I'm making things happen. It's time to assemble the spring sets. Now, one important thing though, while I'm going, we're gonna make the bushings, the slides that go between here. Now the originals, there is not much left of them. The ones that do all the sliding are like almost gone. They're so thin, and even the back ones that don't move that much. Some have holes through them. I only got 3 of one and 2 of the other. So 3 have completely, what's that? No, 2 of them completely disappeared. Like there's nothing left. They're just a little nubs. They're just a little nubs left sticking through. But I picked myself up some of this ultra high molecular polybicarbonate plastic slider material, which is what is used for metal, to stop metal contact in a lot of things in agriculture and everything else. So I'm gonna trace these out. I already did one set, but I can get 2 bigs and 2 smalls out of a 6x6 sheet. If I was to buy these from the Mopar store or anywhere else online, 4 of the larger ones were $145. And then I couldn't find the ones with the single nub on them, but I'm sure they're not going to be much cheaper. $6. I got myself a little 6x6 chunk of plastic. Bought 2 of those. Seemed to work pretty good. I'll give you a little show of how I made these work. All right, so we got our spring here, and I cut up my sheet into the 2 small ones and the 2 big ones, and I got my little fillers that I'm going to use here. We got a clamp to the bottom of the spring, the side that it's going to go on, and then also you can see the space where we have to make a nub of some kind, just like that, so they kind of stay in there. It doesn't hold it in, it just stops it from falling out the side. So what I've done, it's worked pretty good, using a soldering iron to get her good and hot, and I melted it and I scooped this out, like, and push it up against the side so that I got some of the original material that is, you know, still fully attached, and kind of pushed around here to make almost like a cup. And then I use soldering gun and I make lines and I scratch it back and forth, and it makes a bunch of ridges. So with those ridges, I take my torch, pair of pliers, and I get one of these little chunks here, and I start melting this. This stuff melts weird. You start melting it, and it goes crystal clear, and it slowly works its way in. This white color slowly disappears, but it turns crystal clear. And just as it starts to ooze, I then put my torch, point it right down in here, and I melt the surface. And I stick this in with the pliers, and then I only heat the top part, and I kind of just let it melt in. And then when I'm done, I push it down, and the plastic does not stick to these at all. And then when I'm finished, I just kind of cut the top off, because it's like a little mushroom, with my knife, and it is perfect. It looks darn near perfect. Now, I definitely can't do this all with one hand, but we'll melt one in. We'll show you what it looks like. All right, we'll try this. Now, I don't know how good this is gonna, like, longevity-wise. All I know is, for the price of new ones, this is worth a shot. And once this is done, they pop out just like they would the originals, and I cannot break that off. Like, it welds good. So now these aren't the thickest, so you got to be careful. But I just go in just like that, melt the surface, and kind of ooze it up, and I squish it around just to give it some rigid edges so it doesn't slide side to side. This will probably be the most, I guess, the most support it has for sliding out. They give it that little cup, and it kind of makes it like a bowl. So now I got that all squished out. I'm just gonna move this around. It makes a bunch of edges. You keep that warm in there. You start to melt this. It's a little high, but you'll watch. See how it looks like it's shrinking? But if you look close, it's not. It's the exact same size. It just turns crystal clear before it actually starts melting. And it burns a little. Got a little blue flame. But we get the heat in there. And the same thing I could see in the hole. I can see when it's starting to melt. Got a little puddle. And then we just ooze that in. feeding it in there, and as it's turning clear, there's mush. And there we go. I can see right through to the other side, and give it a minute. As soon as it cools down, it'll go back to that same white color when it started. All right, it's cooled down. Going straight to white. So now I'm using my X-Acto knife. Get in here. And cut that excess off. And there we go. We got a perfect plug. And if I work this, oh, there you go. I can get it out. There it is. And it even takes the shape of that spring a little bit from the pressure. And that is on there. That is rock solid. It is not coming off. Just like welding. Puddle on this side. This is liquid completely. They just fuse themselves together and pops right in, snaps in there just like it was factory. So the other end's the exact same, except for it has two spots, two holes that I got to fill. So I'm going to run through those, two smalls, two bigs, and then we'll be ready to stack the spring. All right, all my slides are made on both ends. Now it's just time to stack this thing back together. Got myself some new center bolts. There is a left and a right to every spring. There's a short end and a long end. They go only one way. The front of the spring, which is the big end, that's where all the short ends go. All the longs travel towards the back. So we're just gonna line it up. We're gonna have to use some C-clamps to really squish that stack together because it's gonna get some tension in there. And as I squish it and tighten this bolt, hopefully we'll be able to get everything to touch evenly. And there we are. Stack is together. Pulled down nice and tight, lined up good. Everything is looking good so far. Now, we do have one clamp that goes around the 3 tail ends of where the sliders are. There's 3 springs here. There's 1, 2, there's a third one that's actually the same length as the main spring. So there's 3 of them here, and we got a clamp that goes around and keeps this together just so that when you go over a bump and the car goes up and all the tension comes off the spring, you don't lose your little plastic clips. So it's just kind of a tension that kind of holds it all together. This is it here. It's nothing fancy. It has a funny little round nub sticking out of it that fits in that hole. That keeps it from sliding around too much. Goes right in there. We'll flip her over. Gonna use our clamps again to hold that tight, bend the tabs, and hopefully lock it in. And there we go. 2 springs cleaned and reassembled. So yeah, now I'm going to throw these in the back of my truck, take these to my work where we have the biggest oxygen acetylene. I got to heat these up almost red down here. It's going to burn off the paint. I expected that, not a big deal. So we're going to heat these up red, pound them flat with a hammer, and then we'll pull them in with a clamp while they're nice and red hot, let them sit and cool. That'll hold that end of the stack together. We'll bring them home, and that'll be it. We'll give now that they're fully assembled and done banging around everywhere, I'll give them one more good coat of the rust paint on top of all this. Right now, this is like, you can't even scratch this stuff. It's rock solid. It turns to almost like a plastic. Like I know I say it a lot, but it is amazing, amazing paint. So yeah, once I get those closed up, they'll be burnt up a bit. We'll paint them up, give them one full good coat, and that is it. Springs are done. Axle is ready to go back on. Only thing I'm waiting on is a couple broken parts. So I took this into the local machine shop, and this stud here, you know, on the other one, I snapped the threads off. So they took some measurement, measured all up. They're going to make me a new one to fit right in here. So I centered that hole, and I drilled it out. Got it to the size of the stud that I need and cleaned it up. So once I get the stud, I'll push that through, make sure it's nice and square. It'll sit just below the surface. I'll plug weld that end, and that will be good as new and ready to go. Now as for my shackle, that has the broken one as well too, I also got a fix for that. So I got a bolt here. Now, yeah, the threads are going to be a little bigger, but not a big deal. It's longer than what I need. And this, I'm going to cut the head off that, and that is going to take place right in there. It's going to fit just nice. Now, this is a standard bolt, so where the threads start, I have a metric washer that cannot go over the shoulder. It gets over the threads, but then it sticks on the shoulder. And that's important because, where is my dog bone? Right there. because the other side of the shackle has to sit on that collar, that edge, that shoulder, so it doesn't go all the way down and squish the bushings tight into the shackle. You want to have that movement. So with that washer, where it won't be able to go past, I just have to drill this out just a little bit because of the bigger bolt here. Drill one side a little bit and put the washer on. That'll lock it into here. I'll make this my top bolt so that it's up in behind the frame, because the rear shackle, you can kind of see it if you get down low. You can kind of see it behind the car. So it'll be hidden away. No one will know. I'll plug weld it just like that. Bob's your uncle. Good to go. All right, springs are complete. Went into my work and used a big torch to heat these up. Got them pounded flat and put a clamp on them, squished them together, and they're good to go. Now I do have the final top coat on this side. Still a little tacky. Gonna give it probably another half hour here. And then I'll flip them over and paint the other side, and that's it. Springs are done. I just lit up a fire, even though it's, man, I don't know what it is, 8 or 10 degrees outside today. Strange winter. There hasn't been a winter like this in 23 years since I've moved out west here. It is beautiful. Every day is above zero, between 5, 10 degrees. It's just awesome. It's awesome is what it is. And there we are with the last coat on the springs, and they are done. They are as done as they're gonna get. They're ready to go in. Got my bushings in. Both ends got the bushings. Bolts are in, ready to go, cleaned up. And of course, we got the rear axle here. Now it's all, again, same thing. Just buffed it off with the wire wheel. Got it down so there's no loose material on here at all. Just that light color of surface rust, and the same rust primers that I got on there as well too. But we also got a ton of parts. So of course, we have our rear disassembly gasket. We got that came in. It's the Felpro one. There's the part number there. If you're working on a 8 3/4 rear end 10 bolt, that is the part number for the Mopar. Now it is some people were telling me that just put goop on here, but you got to remember that differential assembly that goes in there is one piece. There's no adjustment on it once it goes in. It is, the carrier is what it is. So you want to make sure that you have an actual fiber gasket made for this rear end in here, so that once it goes together and you have your bearings here, because this is a cup and cone, right? So it's gonna, as it tightens up, it's gonna be dead straight inside there. You want to make sure you have a sure shot all the way through, so your axles are not tipped down. If then there's no gasket, it end up wanting to kind of torque them down a little bit. There might be some play to allow for it, but they're not straight. They'll be down. If the gasket is the wrong one and it's too big, well then of course you're pushing your ends of your axles up. And of course over here, I don't know if we showed it or not yet, but the rear diff assembly is painted, ready to go. So my backing plates and other components. I don't know if I showed the shackle. I think I showed the rear shackle. One side, the threads were broken off. So I've got it drilled and honed out, one side bigger than the other, just so I still keep my shoulder. And I got a nice little bolt that's gonna go through there, and that'll help fix that up. So that rear shackle's taken care of. And then I also got all my seals. So we got 3 different seals here. These here are the lip seals that go on the inner half of the axle. So they're the seals that are in the inners in there. So we call that the inner seal. The outer seal is actually for the backing plates. Because the axle passes through the backing plate, it needs to have a seal for itself as well too. So there's, of course, there's a left and a right. We got those as well. So backing plate seals for you. There's the number there, 8133S. And then your inner seals for the actual axle tube. Where are we at here? There you go. NS470487. Now that, actually, I think that's original. That's an original part number there. So that's what those are. Then also, got the pinion seal for the rear pinion, 7216. Now, I'm not sure, this Federal Mogul Oil Seals. I'm not sure what is the name. Maybe that's the name under National. But there is 2 things you got to watch out for. I don't know. I don't have experience with them. But there's two types of pinion seals. One looks like this. Actually, they both look just like this. But one is a standard lip seal like you would have on anything. The rubber seal with a little spring on it. The actual one that came in the car originally, and also what they highly recommend on most of the guys I was chatting with, is you get the original one that is like a fibrous material. It almost looks like it's made out of leather. I don't know what this stuff really is, but it looks like and feels like leather is what it does. And that's what recommends going in. And also, when you put this in, as soon as you put your yoke in, that is it. Even if you think it comes out smooth, do not remove that yoke in and out of that seal. Now, maybe you can get away with it. Maybe you can't. I don't know. And but you know what? Because I don't have the experience, like I said, I'm going to do exactly what they recommend. Now, it's been about a week since I recorded the other parts of videos, and I can't remember if I showed you these or not. But these are, of course, the seals that go on the outside, the seal the outside of it. So there's two of them. One is on this side, and then the other one goes on the other side of the backing plate up against where the hub goes in. So it's sandwiched on both sides to make sure it seals the outside good. So we have an outer seal, which is actually only holding in grease, right? This side of the bearing is going to be held in by grease, so they're not really anything fancy. So it'll be grease on this side with two seals sealing that, lip seal on the inside, stopping the differential fluid from coming through, and then a seal again on the backing plate to stop it traveling into the brake drum itself. Now, theoretically, I have everything to start throwing that axle together, but I want to wait till I get my hardware, my brake hardware, all my springs, all my levers, kits, the shoes, everything, because I can comfortably, on my bench, put the shoes on, all the springs, the tensioners, everything, easily on the bench, put it on as one unit, seal it all up, put my drums on, call it good. Rather than sitting down on the floor on an angle, trying to work it on the car, it'd be nice to have it sitting right up here flat on the bench and getting it done. Then, of course, we come to my shocks. Now, they're all wrapped up nice here and pretty, but I've already had these apart, and I've sanded down, and I've painted them the fire red, the same color that's under that hood. These shocks only come in, around here anyway, black, blue, or yellow. Kind of the oddest colors. And I thought, you know what? That looked pretty sharp, having those red hanging out underneath there. And it's going to have the fire red stripe between the two-tone, between the two sets of chrome. It'll have that fire red stripe going down there. And there'll be a couple other odds and ends under the car and around there that's going to be red. And I think it'll help set it off. And now, last but not least, the stud that I got that broke off when I broke off all the threads. It snapped off when I was taking the shocks off. The local machine shop made me up a new stud, and it's a tight fit. It's perfect. It is so snug in there. I actually got to twist it to get it all the way through. Now, the other original one has a shoulder that's on there, and it's actually the same thickness of two of these SAE washers. So this will get the two washers on there. Dun, dun, dun. And these are the cups that cradle the bushing on the shock. The bigger one, of course, will go on. And this one just goes up against the shoulder. And, of course, the bolt is going to hold that all on. We'll get a good weld around that. Give her another sandblast. Paint her up. Should be good as new. But that is it for another video. I didn't realize how long some of these videos are getting these days, like between 30 and 40 minutes. I got a pile of spaghetti here. This is the old fuel line, brake line, and emergency cable. I've yanked that all out underneath there as well too, because my next step is to start working underneath this car, getting her cleaned up. So I've got that all out of the way. And the first thing I got to do is start scraping down a lot of this old undercoat. There's still a little bit of dirt and mud in here, and there's some chunks of the undercoat coming off. So I'm going to scrape that down the best I can. That'll get all cleaned up. Then we'll run a brush along the frame. This is all just barely surface. There is no actual rust under this car. It's just a light dusting of surface rust. So we're going to clean that off, make sure all the dust is gone, get my seams sealed underneath, and then we are going to go through and coat this thing and get it taken care of, because there's no better time to work under there and to get the fuel tank in is than when this whole axle and leaf spring assembly is out of there. But yes, that is it. That is the end of this video. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for all the new subscribers. Getting close. It's coming up to 1,000. I can't wait to hit that 1,000 mark. But anyway, I love you all. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe. Catch you guys again later.